Find the second derivative g double prime of x for the function g of x equals x times cosine x. Then evaluate g double prime of pi. So g of x here is made up of two functions multiplying each other, x times the cosine of x. And therefore our derivative will involve the product rule. So our derivative g prime of x will be the derivative of the first, derivative of x is a 1, times the second left alone, cosine x, plus the first left alone, x, times the derivative of the second. The derivative of cosine is negative sine. Leave its inside alone, then multiply by the derivative of the inside to complete the chain rule. Well, the derivative of x is just a 1, so that won't change it. The first term is 1 times cosine x, or just cosine x. The second term is a negative and a 1, negative 1, or just minus, and we have an x times a sine x. So there's our derivative g prime of x. The next thing to do is to take the second derivative, the derivative of the first derivative, g double prime of x. Derivative of the first term is a negative sine x, and then times 1 for the derivative of the inside to complete the chain rule. The second term is a product of two functions, and therefore we will need to make use of the product rule. That minus will distribute on the result of the product, so let's put the product in square brackets. Derivative of the first, that's a 1 times the second left alone, sine x, plus the first left alone, x, times the derivative of the second, the sine, will be a cosine of x, and then times 1 to complete the chain rule. That negative will distribute then onto both of those terms. So g double prime of x will be our first term, negative sine x times 1, will be negative sine x. And now let's distribute the minus into this entire expression here. The first term after distributing will be a negative 1 sine x, or just a negative sine x. The second term will be a negative x cosine x. We can combine together the sine functions, so we will have negative 2 sine x and then negative x cosine x. There's our second derivative, g double prime of x, in its simplified form. Now we want to evaluate g double prime of pi. So we're going to plug a pi in for each of the x's. We will have negative 2 sine of pi minus pi cosine of pi. The sine of pi is a 0. The cosine of pi is a negative 1. Negative 2 times 0 is a 0. Negative pi times a negative 1 is plus pi. 0 plus pi comes out to pi.